to my newest weekly video all about life cycles. A life cycle. So some of you might not know what a life cycle is yet, but today you will learn about what they are and different things that have a life cycle. So what are life cycles? A life cycle is when an animal is born as something different to what it grows into as an adult. But it's not just animals, it can be even plants, and even stars have life cycles. Most animals you know and love have life cycles, and you might not even know it. Almost everything has a life cycle, because really it's almost impossible for something to go from its embryo or baby form to get to its adult form. So almost everything has one. Almost anything can have a life cycle, even including stars, people, and plants. Like the life cycle of a tree. It goes from a little seed then to a full-grown tree. And even you have one. So you will see some of the life cycles of stars and humans now. So, the first life cycle we're going to learn about is the life cycle of a tadpole. And a tadpole then, over time throughout its life cycle, will eventually turn into a frog. So, how it starts off is a female frog lays some frog spawn. Frog spawn is like frog eggs, and they're covered in jelly-like substance that doesn't taste very nice to predators, so they don't get eaten. From them eggs, a thing called a tadpole hatches. It's like a little fish almost. And that tadpole will then eventually grow 2 legs on the back of it. And then the tadpole will grow another 2 legs on the front of its body. Then it will start to lose its tail and gradually begin to look a bit more like a frog, and this is called a froglet. It's not a frog, but a froglet. It's starting to look much more like a frog, but it's quite not there. There is quite a bit of a stub on where there used to be a tail, and it's still very small. If you want to see tadpoles and froglets and the whole entire life cycle of a frog going on in person, you can go to some of my older videos where I had a big tub full of tadpoles and froglets. You can go and check that video out if you want to see them in person for real. And then that froglet will grow and grow and start to lose the stub on where there once was a tail, and it will become a fully grown frog. They're very interesting, life cycles are. It's so interesting from a little tadpole like this. You can go to a frog like this. The next life cycle is one of the most famous life cycles. It's how a caterpillar evolves into a butterfly. So it starts off with a female butterfly laying her eggs on a plant, and the monarch butterfly often lays her eggs on the milkweed because that's where the type of flower that a monarch butterfly lays her eggs on. Over time, them eggs will start to hatch and little caterpillars come out of them. The caterpillars feed on the milkweed leaves and they will get bigger and chunkier and they will over time shed their skin or molt many times until they get big enough to create a thing called a cocoon. A cocoon is when a little a sleeping bag almost is hanging from a stem of some sort, and inside of it is the caterpillar, and over time the caterpillar inside of the cocoon or chrysalis, it can be called a chrysalis or a cocoon, and inside of it that little caterpillar is slowly but surely turning into a butterfly. And then finally the adult butterfly emerges from the chrysalis, but it has to wait a few minutes or hours because its wings are very moist and it cannot take off with its moist, crinkled up wings from being stuck in the chrysalis, forming properly, and then it flutters away. And it happens all over again. So life cycles are just a big circle because it goes from egg to adult, and the adult lays the eggs and the eggs turn into another adult, and it keeps going. It's really interesting. So this next one is about the egg to the chicken. So the egg is laid by the female chicken, and inside of that egg is a little yolk. And over time, that yolk will start to grow, and the inside of that egg will grow a baby chicken embryo. An embryo is an underdeveloped animal that is not yet ready to be born, but it's still developing inside of an egg or its mother. So eventually that embryo will start to look more like the actual animal, and then it will just hatch or it will be born. Then the hatchling is a newly born chick, and then the hatchling turns into just a normal chick. And the chick then grows into a pullet. A pullet is the term used for a chicken that's young, that hasn't fully turned into a chicken, but it's between being an adult chicken and being a chick. It's like a teenager chicken. And then the pullet will turn into an adult chicken. And then, of course, it happens all over again. And luckily for me, I have chickens, and I'll be able to see this life cycle in real life. The next life cycle is about how the eggs turn into a fish. Fish eggs is what's it called, a delicacy, I think that's the word for it in some places, and it's called caviar or roe. But today we're going to be learning about what happens when the eggs hatch. So the egg is laid by the female fish, And over time, a little fish embryo grows inside of that egg. And then out of the egg comes a larva, or a larvae, a fish larvae, which is a little tiny, teeny baby fish. Then that will grow into a fry. A fry is not the fry you have when you fry a fish on the barbecue, but when it's called a baby fish. A baby fish is called a fry. And that's just a bit, that's like a child's fish. And then it turns into a fingerling, or a juvenile fish. And this is like the chicken. This is the teenager fish, and that will then turn into the adult fish. The fish life cycle is amazing, especially for salmon. A salmon life cycle is absolutely incredible and so interesting. We'll do a video about salmon sometime, another time, because it's just so amazing. There will be a part 2 to this because it's got so many animals that have life cycles, and it was pretty hard choosing which ones to do for this video. So this life cycle is about how a jellyfish larvae turns then into a fully grown jellyfish. This is going to be focused on the moon jelly. So, the larvae, it settles to the bottom of the sea and attaches to a hard surface like a rock or some sand. And then it grows into a polyp, which is like this little sea anemone looking thing. After maturing, the polyp will undergo a radical change. They lose the tentacles and become a non-feeding strobile. A strobile is a strobila that it's got more parts to it. You'll see it now. The top of it will start to peel off. So, as you can see better in the picture, it's got many layers here, and each of them layers will start to peel off, and they'll become free-floating individuals. And these are called Ephyra. Ephyra. It's pretty hard to pronounce, but these mature into a medusa, which is the term for an adult jellyfish. And that life cycle will happen all over again. And it really reminds me of the species of jellyfish, the immortal jellyfish, because it can live forever and ever, unless it gets eaten by a fish. The next life cycle, the second last one, is the larva or larvae to the ladybug or the ladybird, depending on where you're from. So it starts off with some eggs that are laid on a leaf by the female. These turn into the larvae then. And over time, the larvae will turn into a pupa, which is a little worm-like thing. And then that pupa will then turn into the final product, the ladybird. Probably one of my favorite beetles. And in school you find them all over the place. So this is the last one. the bee life cycle. So, the bee egg is laid by the queen bee. The queen bee lays almost 3,000 eggs a day, so there's a lot of eggs. Then, a larvae will hatch out of the egg, and the worker bees will feed the larvae until it turns into a pupa. And just like the previous ones, over time, that pupa will grow into a fully grown bee, and it will crawl out of the cell, and then it will do its job, whether it's a queen bee, a drone bee, or a worker bee, and it will do its job just like any other bee. So, now we've learned about life cycles. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you next week. If you enjoyed, like and subscribe. Goodbye.